Welcome to Breaking Ties, a new you after divorce. This is your go-to source for practical advice and support for when the divorce process has finished. Join us each weekday for a quick chat where we'll cover a variety of topics related to post-divorce. Together, we'll explore the emotional, financial, and legal aspects of life after divorce and help you find the best path forward for you and your family. Here's your host and Certified Divorce Financial Analyst professional, Mike Fulkerson.
Hello and welcome to Breaking Ties, a new you after divorce. I'm your host, Mike Fulkerson, financial advisor and certified divorce financial analyst professional. And right now we're doing Mike's relationship series, just looking at some of the relationship pieces, parts, and doing a breakdown and analysis on why things might have gone wrong. You know, it's like, hey, let's take a look at this stuff. At the same time, I think it's just as important to figure out who you are. So we talk about this, a new you after divorce, and the reality is it is a new you. I mean, you are on your own, whether you have kids or not, doesn't matter. If you have to take care of kids, that just adds a layer of complexity to your side of things. You got a parenting plan as well, but the reality is you are still going to be you. And I still think it's good to kind of debrief and look at what went wrong with the relationship. And I've talked about this from the before you got divorced, going through the process, and now here you are at the end. And that really is a foundational piece of moving on. It's like, okay, you kind of look back at what went well with the relationship, like what would you keep for the next relationship? And then you also look at what didn't go so well and what would I adjust? Who am I? And working on like rebuilding parts of you. And as we go through this series over the next few episodes, we're going to talk more in depth about some of these pieces, parts of yourself, and putting yourself back together and building up yourself so that you get in a good spot. And if you want to have another relationship, you're at a position to where you can. I always say that, first and foremost, you got to live alone and get yourself right and get all your ducks in a row and understand how your household works. Whether you're single or have kids, doesn't really matter. You got a process and a flow that goes on in the household that you have to yourself fully understand so that when you go into a new relationship, you're not behind the curve. You have a complete understanding of, all right, here's my situation. There's the other person's situation. And how do we start to blend or mesh that together? And what does that look like? And so all in all, when you look back, you're always going to see things like, oh, I wish I could have done that. I wish I had made that decision. And sometimes, heck, you might have even made the right call and you still end up where you're at. And that's just how it turned out. It's not good or bad. It's no fun, yes, and it's sad, yes. But in the end, you are likely to be in a better position and a better spot for yourself that allows you to be that next best version of you, which is kind of like the latest and greatest kind of tagline. See it a lot more now, referenced as far as the next best version of you. And so when you look at who is that person? How do I want to be portrayed in public? How do I want my kids to see me? If you have kids, what are some things that I would do differently, or what's some things I would do to enhance myself? And you're already through the divorce process, and it was grueling, more than likely. A lot of times, even amicable divorces they're just mentally draining. And so when you look at like next steps, heck, some of it might just be rest, relaxation, just, hey, collect yourself for a period of time, and then start to build back up again. So it doesn't have to be anything grandioso. It doesn't have to be anything ridiculously large or big. Sometimes it's the little things and the simplest things that can make all the difference in the long run. So I hope you join me for the rest of the series because I think it's pretty cool. And if you have any questions, I'm always available. You can find my information in the contact section. And all in all, I do hope now that you're through the divorce process that you're, finally getting yourself into a good space, and hopefully it's what you envisioned coming out of it. And so with that, I'm going to sign off for today, and I'm going to hopefully see you tomorrow on the next podcast, and have yourself a fantastic day. Take care. Hello, and welcome to Breaking Ties, a new you after divorce. I'm your host, Mike Fulkerson, financial advisor at Certified Divorce Financial Analyst Professional. And this is part of my Mike's relationship series, as I just got out of a long-term relationship with my girlfriend. And today's topic is moving on. And we're through the divorce process here. And moving on is exactly what we're doing. And so you might have some of this all figured out. You might not have gotten a chance to work on some of this just yet. Sometimes it just depends on your situation. I mean, if you have kids, sometimes you just can't get to the processing time speed that you would like. And so you're going to, have to do some of that on the fly here at the end when it's all said and done. Now, when we're talking about a new you after divorce and moving on, we're really thinking about you. The time has passed to think about your ex. It's really like, okay, where are you? But part of that is looking back. Hey, where did I come from? What happened in the previous relationship? How do I, make sure that I don't have that happen again? Because really, if you're looking for a forever person, you're going to want to bring the best of you along for the ride. And it may take you a while to get there. Nobody said you had to date right away or look for another individual. I often believe you need to stand on your own 2 feet for a bit first, so that way when you enter the new relationship, you know exactly where you are, and then it'll allow you to better understand where the other person is coming from with regards to their situation. And friends are good for this, getting out there, relaxing with friends, talking can help process some of the emotions and choices and things you got coming up, things you didn't think about. It's like, oh, now I got to think about them. So because you have a whole new financial setup probably coming out of the divorce, the assets were divided, property divided, everything's kind of been settled. And so your numbers are what they are. And part of moving on is really understanding and knowing the numbers and making sure that, oh, all right, now these are my numbers. I may not have taken care of, say, paying the bills before, but I am now. I'm in charge. And so you want to take that responsibility seriously and set up a system that works for you with regards to the finances. So, when you're moving on, hopefully by this stage, after the divorce, you've found a place already and you're kind of getting settled into that place. If you haven't, and you're just now starting to look, well, you're going to add more time. It's going to take time because moving is a huge thing. Whether you have kids or not doesn't even matter. Just moving yourself from one space to another takes a lot of effort and energy. And so you definitely want to put time in on that. Hopefully you've already moved and now you can just put time into, what's my space? What do I do with my space? I'm going to move on and be my own person. Then what does that look like for where I live? How does that fit? Who's my, who am I deep down inside kind of thing. So it's one of those parts, that's more of a physical kind of thing, moving, locations and stuff like that. There's also the emotional state of moving on. How do you get past the other individual? Was it your choice to get divorced? Was it not? Was it your choice to break up? Was it not? And those are going to have an impact on how quickly you can recover and finish the processing on your side of things so you can truly move on from there. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of effort. I always say put in a lot of time on that, a lot of self-reflection, and go through it piece by piece. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It doesn't mean it was your fault that the relationship didn't succeed. Sometimes it just goes sideways, and external environmental stuff will push the relationship. You just weren't able to get it back on the right track. And while it's unfortunate, it doesn't make it like right or wrong. It doesn't make you right or wrong. So in the end, it's really just down to, here I am. What's my next steps? With that, I want to thank you for watching Breaking Ties, a new you after divorce. And should you have questions, let me know. Happy to answer them. I'm going to wish you a good day and take care. Hello and welcome to Breaking Ties, a new you after divorce. I'm your host, Mike Fulkerson, financial advisor, certified divorce financial analyst professional. And we're right in the middle of Mike's relationship series after I've been saying that I've gotten out of a long-term relationship with my girlfriend and, we parted ways friendly and amicably kind of thing. And so not everything works out the way you think to, even on a second relationship. But really, what we want to talk about today are, friends, family, kids, with regards to coming out of the divorce process. And, kids is probably the biggest piece of this. If you have kids, that transition is still pretty big for them because now you've got a bona fide parenting plan that you're going to implement. And it does provide structure and it does provide a lot of answers for them, which does help them move on more quickly. But at the same time, you got a whole new routine schedule that's going to be coming out, and they're going to be at one parent's house at one point in time and another parent's house at another point in time. So they're going through a huge transition, and depending on their age, if they're younger, it's going to be potentially more challenging, less challenging as they get older, hopefully. But even still, if you have a middle schooler, high schooler kind of setup with kids and ages, they might have a tough time too, because it is very difficult for them to understand how their parents aren't living together anymore. Older kids who have moved out and on their own might be less impactful because of the fact that they might have seen it coming or they're familiar with people who've gotten a divorce, but they're likely just to fall in the category of, hey, they want you to be happy. And so in the end, when you look at the kids, if you can create as much consistency as possible between the two households, that's great. But you don't get to control the other spouse's household. So, and how they do things all the time. That's just how it goes. So it might be a little challenging from time to time. When you look at your friends, they're there for you. They should lean on you. You should lean on them. And in this case, getting out of the divorce process, I'm sure you've been leaning on them a lot this, past time frame, whether it's just breaking down ideas, whether they're giving you thoughts because maybe they went through a divorce themselves. And all in all, what you really want from, your friends is for them to be there for you because they're always wanting you to be the happiest you can be. And when you look at hey, it just didn't work out, they're like, that's okay. Well, get on and get through this kind of thing. But, who knows? Sometimes they provide great insight. Sometimes they're great just to go out with and have a beverage or dinner, share some time with, just to, be there. Doesn't necessarily have to do a whole lot. But, friends are great for that. And then you got family. Maybe you've reconnected. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you have a family who's been highly involved since the beginning of the divorce process. There again, it's another support group, if you will. They're able to watch the kids. They're able to give you time and space free. You're able to go there and not, say, be alone all the time. You may feel like, hey, I want to be around some people. Family is great for that. So really, when we look at all these transition timeframes, it's for kids, it's for your friends, it's for your family, just doesn't impact you personally 100%. There's a lot of other people outside of you who actually take an interest in you. You might make new friends. It's very possible you're going to come up with new friends because you see new places or you're around different places that you haven't been around before. So when it's all said and done, each piece of this, has its own part in the story that you really get to put together. And with that, I'd like to thank you for joining me on Breaking Ties, a new you after divorce. Appreciate you coming here, and look for my next relationship series video coming out here soon. But if you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, have yourself a fantastic day. Hello, and welcome to Breaking Ties, a new you after divorce. I'm your host, Mike Fulkerson, financial advisor and certified divorce financial analyst professional. And we've been going through Mike's relationship series right now as I got out of a long-term relationship with my girlfriend. And we're going to look at self-care today. And once you get through the divorce process, you may not think self-care is quite as important because you don't have all these decisions and choices, but really it's a continuation. And self-care doesn't really go away a lot of times because there's a lot of pieces, parts in life that will affect you and impact you and cause you stress or more stress, less stress. But the reality is, you just get in good habits of mindfulness, exercise, nutrition, sleep, drinking plenty of water, things like that. There's a number of things you can do to help improve that self-care side of things and make sure you're healthy, you're going strong, because this next chapter of your life you don't want to miss because of the fact that you're out of the woods from the divorce process. Now, granted, you got to still probably deal with your ex if you have kids and stuff. And maybe if you don't have kids, your ex is in the picture. Or heck, maybe you're friends with your ex because friends, you just realized as adults, like, it's just not going to work at this current state. But I'd still like to maintain contact with you. So there's a lot of different things, but self-care, hopefully is at the top of your list. And part of that is going to be just breaking down the divorce process and then where are we at now, and then how do we build on what the settlement agreement was and get those pieces done, and how do I process and start moving forward with who I am as an individual, because now I am on my own and it is all my choices and decisions. But self-care, it does good things no matter what the situation is, and I would always recommend that you continue with the self-care. Even if you have kids, them too, because there's a lot of good that comes from the techniques and stuff as ways to get rid of anxiety and depression and all of life's challenges that are thrown at you. You're able to then be more cognizant, let's say. And on the flip side, you can start making that better version of yourself because, heck, we're out of the process of, the grind of the divorce and settling everything and negotiating everything. Now it's time to just live and get to those parts that you were looking forward to. Because really, once you get through the process, it's all about you and figuring out who you are. And I'm going to talk more about that in the next segment of the podcast as far as, you. And what does that mean and what does that look like? Because everybody's different. But you want to be in a good spot before you start working on yourself, and you want to have the routine down, and you want to have the self-care going. So that way it's just another piece of what you're going to be building into yourself and the next best version of you. I want to thank you for joining me on this episode of Breaking Ties, a New You After Divorce. If you have questions, let me know. I'm always happy to help. In the meantime, I hope everything's going as well as possible for you. And take care. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Breaking Ties, a New You After Divorce. I'm your host, Mike Fulkerson, financial advisor and certified divorce financial analyst professional. And today I'm winding down the series on Mike's relationship series. And hopefully you've been listening to it all week and you've been getting some really good content from that. And today is no different. Today is kind of like being in the right headspace. And I say that because we are done with the divorce, and being in the right headspace, there's a lot to it. It encompasses a lot. It's not just self-care. It's not just moving on. It's that and more, because in the end, we are now in the position to start building and working on ourselves. I mean, you look back at the relationship you just had. What were the pros? What were the cons? What I like? What I didn't like? What do I want to carry into the next relationship? And it's one of those things where you want to get yourself right. You want to be centered. You want to have all the pieces within you lined up. So when you decide to maybe date or find that next individual, you are in the best place you can be, so that, and hopefully they are, and then you can build a relationship for both of you together out of that. And it's really hard though, because you might still be struggling with the fact that you're no longer married and the relationship didn't go where you wanted it to be. Even if you're just dating somebody, you might be like, wow, that really didn't work out. I don't know, let me look at why. Let me take a look back at some of the sequence of events. Sometimes it's yours, things you could have done, could have changed. Both of you together could have changed things. Other times it just seems like, hey, this is where the relationship was meant to go and end, and it just was the right thing at the right time, and now you're looking for something else. But there's other pieces that can come into this. You could have a loss of focus and a lack of motivation, as you try to sort through, what happened in your life and the failed relationship that you just had and you're coming out of. And that's okay. That's pretty common. I can't imagine, everybody gets through this without some kind of like challenging thoughts and processes. But in the end, you got to power through. It may not be right at the beginning, but at some point you got to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and you got to move forward. And that's, comes down to just how do you process? How much time do you need? Who do you need to talk to? Do you need a therapist? Do you need friends? Do you need family? Who is it? How can you do it? Do you have to journal? What does it? And then what did you give up during the relationship? Most people sacrifice and compromise something. Maybe it's a more important piece to you than you realized at the time, and you get back to being yourself. So there's a lot that goes into being yourself and building the next best version of you. So when you sit down and do all these pieces, take it with a grain of salt. There's a lot. And then you might have to do some reshuffling, and you might look at it from a different angle, and finally things will line up and you'll get through to the end. But in the end, we never really stop growing. You're still going to pick up things. You're still going to try things. You're going to do stuff. And, hopefully it makes us better people and well rounds us. All right. That's going to do it for this episode. I thank you for joining me on this episode of Breaking Ties, a new you after divorce. If you need anything, reach out to me, call, email, happy to help. And as always, I like to, hope that you're doing well and wish you the best.